This is Autoline Daily, the show dedicated to enthusiasts of the global automotive industry. For the first time in more than a decade, the price of lithium-ion battery packs increased. According to Bloomberg New Energy Finance, which has been tracking the market since 2010, rising raw material and component prices, as well as rising inflation, led to the increase. The average price globally in 2022 is $151 per kilowatt hour, up 7% from last year. Bloomberg NEF says the increase could have been larger if it weren't for the adoption of LFP, or lithium iron phosphate batteries, which are 20% cheaper on average. Its study includes batteries for passenger and commercial vehicles, buses, and stationary storage products. And if you only look at BEV packs, prices were $138 per kilowatt hour in 2022. Prices also vary per region. In China, battery pack prices were cheapest at $127 per kilowatt hour. Bloomberg NEF says prices will remain about the same in 2023 before dropping again in 2024. And by 2026, it says battery packs will fall below $100 per kilowatt hour on average. As we reported yesterday, Ford is getting resistance from some of its dealers on how it plans to sell EVs. Now we have a better idea of how many aren't making the investment, which will cost $500,000 or $1 to $1.2 million, depending on what investment tier they choose. At the Automotive News World Congress, CEO Jim Farley said nearly 2/3 of its U.S. dealers have elected to become EV certified, and the majority of them chose to invest in the higher tier. But that means the other third, or over 1,000 dealers, are not making the initial EV investment. Based on yesterday's report, some will probably never make that switch. However, others might just be taking a wait-and-see approach. Ford will open another investment program in 2025 that would allow dealers that buy in to sell EVs by 2027. Tesla is denying reports that it plans to cut production in China. Yesterday, Reuters reported that the EV maker will cut Model Y production at its Shanghai factory by 20% this month due to increasing inventory. But Tesla China issued a statement saying the reports were untrue and did not elaborate. The company set a record last month, delivering more than 100,000 vehicles, which was 40% higher than the previous month. Hey, I know some of you were screaming this in the comments yesterday. But in order to bring you our show when we do, we start really early in the morning. And sometimes that means we might miss something or not have the most accurate information when the show comes out. But thanks for all your comments. We are reading them, so keep them coming.
We want to know what drives your testing. OTA, connected car, diagnostics, remote testing. Intrepid Control Systems is here to help you work from anywhere. Intrepid Control Systems, driven by your data.
One of the big drawbacks of fuel cells is the lack of a hydrogen network to refuel vehicles. That's because pure hydrogen is expensive to compress for transport, and it's difficult to store for long periods. So in recent years, scientists have turned to ammonia to extract hydrogen, since it contains 3 hydrogen molecules, and it's also easier to transport and store than hydrogen. But there are also drawbacks to this. In order to get the hydrogen out of ammonia, it requires extremely high temperatures, around 400 degrees Celsius or 732 degrees Fahrenheit. And also expensive catalysts are needed for the process. But researchers at Princeton and Rice universities may have discovered a breakthrough and developed a technique to split hydrogen from liquid ammonia that is cheaper and less energy intensive. It uses an LED to excite electrons in iron and copper nanoparticles to split the ammonia into hydrogen and nitrogen, which can be done at room temperature with no additional heating. The researchers say the process is scalable and it can be produced locally instead of at large centralized plants. The next step is to find a cleaner way to create ammonia. It's currently done so with high temperatures and pressures using fossil fuels. And if that can be solved, this new technique has the potential to be the brake that fuel cells needed. Luxury performance is having its day in the sun as Mercedes revealed the new AMG version of the S-Class. Let's slide past the obvious stuff, like unique styling accents inside and out, as well as upgraded brakes and suspension, and move on to the real exciting stuff. Power comes from a 4-liter twin-turbo V8 paired to a rear-mounted electric motor that combines for 802 horsepower and over 1,000 pound-feet of torque. That makes this the most powerful S-Class ever, and it will do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.3 seconds. Not too bad for a sedan that weighs over 5,700 pounds, or nearly 2,600 kilograms. The Mercedes-AMG S-Class is also a plug-in hybrid and features a 13.1 kilowatt-hour battery pack that provides up to 33 kilometers or 20 miles of range. Although Mercedes says the pack is designed for fast power delivery and draw, not for the longest possible range. Ford says it will be carbon neutral by 2050, GM says by 2040, and Stellantis says by 2038. Carbon neutrality means they will not be adding any new net carbon to the atmosphere. Almost all the other automakers in the world are making the same promise. And this is why the auto industry is so committed to electric vehicles. Automakers can't get to carbon neutrality with hybrids or even plug-in hybrids. As efficient as they are, they still emit too much CO2. Only battery electrics are going to get them there. And this was one of the hot topics at the SAE's North American International Propulsion Conference last month. The talk was that hybrids and plug-in hybrids are not going to go away in the short term, but they have a limited shelf life that is going to expire sometime in the next decade.
At Schaeffler, we pioneer motion. Electrifying mobility, manufacturing smarter, reducing CO2 emissions, making energy production clean. Schaeffler pioneers motion to advance how the world moves.
Navistar and self-driving company TuSimple are ending a partnership to develop autonomous semi-trucks. Back in 2020, Navistar bought a minority stake in the startup, and the two plan to introduce Level 4 self-driving trucks in 2024. But now the companies have abruptly ended that partnership without specifying why. But they aren't the only companies backing away from developing AVs. As you know, Ford and Volkswagen recently ended their partnership with Argo AI. GM's all-electric commercial vehicle company BrightDrop is expanding into new markets. Delivery company DHL will add BrightDrop vans to its fleet in Canada starting next year. DHL is also testing BrightDrop's Trace e-carts in a pilot in Toronto. They are ergonomically designed containers which feature a built-in electric hub motor to make moving them around easier. GM also opened its first EV manufacturing plant in Canada. It retooled its Cami assembly plant in Ontario to build BrightDrop vans, and the first one rolled off the assembly line yesterday. That plant will build around 50,000 BrightDrop vans annually by 2025. Sounds like the performance version of the Acura Integra, the Type S, will have the same setup as the Honda Civic Type R. Undergoing testing right now, the Integra Type S will feature a 2-liter turbocharged engine that makes over 300 horsepower and is mated to a 6-speed manual transmission and a limited slip differential. Headed to the Acura lineup for the 2024 model year, we should learn more closer to the vehicle's launch date. Speaking of manual transmissions, they might not die with electric vehicles. The chief engineer of Lexus Electrified says that it's developing a manual for EVs that's, quote, not just a design concept. The system is said to feature a shift lever, a tach, and a third pedal, but it will use software to simulate the feeling of a manual. But that also means each driver could tune the system to their preference. Lexus says test vehicles have been fun to drive, but let us know what you think in the comments. And that brings us to the end of today's show. Thanks for tuning in.
Autoline Daily is brought to you by Bridgestone, solutions for your journey. Intrepid Control Systems, over-the-air engineering, boost your game. And by Scheffler, we pioneer motion.